Driving for Uber in Boston was my way of making ends meet while studying at Northeastern. The city, with its blend of historical charm and modern hustle, had become familiar to me over the months. Most nights were routine, filled with short rides and friendly conversations. But one night, a ride request changed everything. It was a chilly October evening around midnight when I got the ping. The pickup location was in Beacon Hill, a historic neighborhood with narrow, gaslit streets. I navigated my way through the cobblestone roads, feeling a strange sense of unease. When I arrived, a woman was waiting under a street lamp. Her name on the app was Eliza. Eliza was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress that seemed out of place for the modern city night. Her presence felt almost otherworldly. As she slid into the back seat, I greeted her. "Good evening, Eliza," I said. "Good evening," she replied softly, her voice distant. We set off towards an address on the outskirts of the city. The further we drove, the more isolated it became. The city lights faded, and we were soon surrounded by dense woods. The tension in the car was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a decrepit mansion, its silhouette looming ominously against the night sky. The place looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and overgrown vegetation. "Here we are," Eliza said, her tone suddenly cheerful. "Are you sure this is the right place?" I asked, my gut telling me to leave as quickly as possible. "Yes, thank you for the ride," she replied, stepping out of the car. As she walked towards the mansion, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Uber, informing me that the ride had been canceled. Frustrated, I turned the car around and started back down the road. In the rearview mirror, I saw Eliza standing at the entrance, staring at me with an expression that sent chills down my spine. Her eyes seemed to glow in the darkness, and a sinister smile curled on her lips. I floored the gas pedal, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. The road seemed longer on the way back, the shadows closing in around me. My mind raced with questions. Who was Eliza? Why had she come to that abandoned mansion? And most importantly, what did she want from me? The next day, unable to shake the eerie encounter, I decided to investigate. I searched for the mansion's address online and discovered its dark history. It was once owned by a wealthy family in the 1800s, but tragedy struck when their daughter, Eliza, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Some say she was murdered, her body never found. Others claim she haunts the mansion, luring unsuspecting victims. As I read the chilling tales, a shiver ran down my spine. I realized I had given a ride to a ghost, a restless spirit seeking something or someone. The experience left me shaken, and I couldn't bring myself to drive for Uber again. The memory of that night haunted me, a constant reminder that some stories are better left untold. Weeks passed, and I tried to move on with my life, but the encounter with Eliza lingered in my mind. I started noticing strange things. My phone would buzz with notifications from the Uber app, even though I had stopped driving. The same ride request, always from Eliza, always to the same abandoned mansion. One night, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. Groggy and disoriented, I picked it up. The screen displayed multiple missed ride requests from Eliza. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Then, a cold breeze swept through the room, and I felt a presence. Turning slowly, I saw her. Eliza was standing in the corner of my room, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered, her voice echoing in the stillness. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't move or speak. Eliza moved closer, her expression a mix of sorrow and anger. "You must help me," she said, reaching out with a ghostly hand. The next day, I knew what I had to do. I had to return to the mansion and uncover the truth. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I drove back to the outskirts of the city. The mansion looked even more foreboding in the daylight, its decaying structure a testament to years of neglect. Entering the mansion, the air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. I made my way through the dusty, cobweb-laden corridors, guided by an unseen force. In one of the rooms, I found a diary. It belonged to Eliza, detailing her life and the events leading up to her disappearance. According to the diary, Eliza had fallen in love with a man her family disapproved of. They planned to elope, but she was caught and locked away in the mansion. In her final entry, she wrote about her desperation and fear, hinting at something sinister lurking within the house. As I delved deeper into the diary, I felt a presence behind me. Turning around, I saw Eliza standing in the doorway. This time she looked different, more human. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, and she gestured for me to follow her. She led me to a hidden room behind a bookshelf. Inside, I found her skeletal remains, bound and hidden away. The truth hit me like a freight train. Eliza had been murdered by her own family, her body concealed to cover up their crime. With trembling hands, I called the police. The discovery of Eliza's remains made headlines, and the mansion was finally recognized for the horror it had concealed for over a century. Eliza's spirit was finally at peace, her story told and her murderers exposed. The experience changed me. I couldn't go back to my old life, the weight of what I had uncovered too heavy to ignore. I left Boston, seeking a fresh start in a new city. But no matter where I went, the memory of Eliza and that fateful night stayed with me. I often wondered what would have happened if I hadn't taken that ride request. But in the end, I realized that some things are meant to be uncovered, no matter how terrifying. Eliza's story needed to be told, and I was the one chosen to tell it. Now, whenever I see a white dress or drive past an old mansion, I think of Eliza. Her ghost may have found peace, but the shadows of that night still linger, a constant reminder that the past never truly stays buried. Driving for Uber in the heart of Manhattan was always an adventure. The city's pulse, its constant motion, kept me alert during my night shifts. I enjoyed the rhythm of the streets, the variety of passengers, each with their own stories. But one night, a ride request turned my routine upside down. It was just after 11 p.m. when I accepted a pickup from a well-known research facility near Central Park. The passenger's name was Dr. Arthur Hayes. As he approached my car, I noticed he was sweating profusely, his lab coat stained and disheveled. "Dr. Hayes," I called out as he climbed into the back seat. "Yes, please drive." "Quickly," he responded, his voice strained. I started the car and merged into traffic. "Rough night at the lab?" I tried to make small talk, sensing his anxiety. "You have no idea," he muttered, clutching his briefcase tightly. "Just get me to my apartment. It's on the Upper West Side." The tension in the car was palpable. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. His face was pale, and he kept wiping his forehead with a trembling hand. Something was clearly wrong. As we navigated through the busy streets, Dr. Hayes's condition worsened. He began to moan softly, his breathing becoming more labored. I considered pulling over and calling for help, but his earlier urgency made me hesitate. "Are you okay, Dr. Hayes?" I asked, my concern growing. "No, I'm not," he gasped. "I need to tell you something important." "Go ahead," I urged, my heart pounding. "I'm a virologist," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. We were working on a new project, something classified. An experiment went wrong. I was exposed to something. I swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tighter. What do you mean, exposed? He winced in pain, clutching his abdomen. A parasitic organism. It was supposed to be contained, but it got out. I think it's inside me. A cold chill ran down my spine. Inside you? Are you saying you're infected? Yes. He groaned, his eyes wild with fear. And it's spreading. I can feel it. I drove faster, desperate to get him to his apartment. But before we could reach our destination, Dr. Hayes began to convulse violently. His body thrashed against the back seat, and he let out a guttural scream. "Help me!" he cried, his voice distorted. Panic surged through me. I pulled over to the side of the road, unsure of what to do. "Hold on. I'm calling 911. No, it's too late," he gasped, his eyes rolling back. "You need to get out. Now." I fumbled for my phone, but before I could dial, Dr. Hayes's body arched unnaturally, and a grotesque bulge appeared beneath his skin. He let out another scream, and the bulge began to move, shifting and writhing as if something was trying to escape. "God, no," I whispered, my mind reeling with horror. Dr. Hayes's transformation was both horrifying and mesmerizing. His skin stretched and tore as the parasitic organism fought its way out. His eyes turned milky white, and he let out a final, agonized scream before collapsing into the seat. The creature that emerged was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a writhing mass of tentacles and sharp, insect-like appendages, covered in a slimy, translucent membrane. It screeched, its high-pitched wail piercing the silence of the car. Instinct took over. I threw open the door and scrambled out, slamming it shut behind me. The creature thrashed inside the car, its tentacles lashing against the windows. I could see Dr. Hayes's lifeless body slumped in the back seat, the creature's grotesque form pulsating in the dim light. My mind raced. I needed to contain the situation, to prevent the creature from escaping into the city. But how? I had no weapons, no means of defense. Desperation fueled my actions. I searched the nearby alley for anything that could help. My eyes landed on a metal pipe, half buried in a pile of debris. Grabbing it, I approached the car cautiously. The creature was still thrashing, its movements growing more erratic. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do. With a swift motion, I smashed the car window, causing the creature to screech in rage. I jabbed the pipe through the broken window, aiming for the creature's core. It writhed violently, but I kept pushing, determined to end its rampage. Finally, with a sickening squelch, the creature went limp, its body deflating like a punctured balloon. I stepped back, my hands shaking. The creature lay still, its once terrifying form now reduced to a lifeless heap. The nightmare was over. I called the authorities, explaining the situation as best as I could. Within minutes, the area was swarmed with police and medical personnel. They took Dr. Hayes's body and the creature away, sealing off the scene. An officer approached me, his expression grim. "You did the right thing, staying calm and containing the threat. But this is far from over." "What do you mean?" I asked, still in shock. "Dr. Hayes wasn't the only one exposed. We need to trace his steps, find anyone else who might be infected." The weight of his words sank in. This was just the beginning of a much larger crisis. The city was at risk, and I had been at the center of it all. In the days that followed, I was contacted by the CDC and other agencies. They debriefed me extensively, piecing together Dr. Hayes's last moments. The research facility was shut down, and a citywide alert was issued. Despite the chaos, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I had survived a nightmarish ordeal, one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. But I had also played a role in preventing a potential catastrophe. As I walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan, the familiar sights and sounds felt different. I had faced the unknown and emerged stronger. But the memory of that night, of Dr. Hayes and the creature, would always linger in the back of my mind. Some stories, I realized, are too terrifying to forget. And as an Uber driver, I had become a part of one such story. Oh boy, I gotta tell you, driving for Uber in London can be a real roller coaster. You get all kinds of characters, from tourists marveling at Big Ben to locals just trying to get home after a long day. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for that night. It was a chilly November evening, the kind that makes you wish you'd stayed home with a cup of tea. I was about to call it a night when a ride request came through. The pickup location was in a quiet, upscale neighborhood near Notting Hill. The passenger's name was Sarah. I pulled up to the address, and there she was, standing under a street lamp. Sarah was in her mid-30s, dressed smartly in a business suit. She looked like she'd had a rough day, but who hasn't in this city? "Evening, Sarah," I greeted as she got into the back seat. "Hi," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you take me to Hackney?" "Sure thing," I said, setting the GPS. It was a bit of a drive, but I didn't mind. More miles meant more money. As we started our journey, I noticed Sarah was fidgety, constantly glancing out the window and checking her phone. Something was off, but it wasn't my place to pry. I just focused on the road, navigating through the evening traffic. "Damn, long day?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "You could say that," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Just work stuff." I nodded, sensing she didn't want to go into details. The streets of London were busy as usual, the city's lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Sarah's nervous energy was contagious, making me uneasy. "Mind if I ask what you do for a living?" I ventured, hoping to steer the conversation into safer waters. "I'm a journalist," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Investigative reporting." "That sounds intense," I said, genuinely impressed. "Exposing the truth and all that?" "Yeah, something like that," she muttered, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Her anxiety was starting to get to me. I checked the mirror too, half expecting to see someone following us. But the streets were just as they always were, a mix of cabs, buses, and late-night stragglers. "Everything all right?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just keep driving," she insisted, her tone more urgent. "Please." All right, now I was really on edge. I kept an eye on the road, but my mind was racing. What was she so scared of? The way she kept checking her phone and looking over her shoulder. It was like she was expecting someone. "Look, if there's something wrong, maybe I can help," I offered, glancing back at her. "You can't," she said flatly. "Just get me to Hackney." Her phone buzzed, and she quickly silenced it, her fingers trembling. Damn, this was getting weirder by the minute, but a job's a job, right? So I just kept driving, hoping we'd get there soon. As we crossed the Thames, the city seemed to grow darker, the streetlights casting eerie shadows. Sarah's anxiety was palpable, filling the car with a sense of dread. I tried to focus on the familiar sights, the landmarks that usually brought me comfort. But tonight they felt different, sinister even. We were halfway to Hackney when Sarah's phone rang again. This time she answered it. "What do you want?" she hissed, her voice shaking. I couldn't make out the words on the other end, but whatever was said made her go pale. She hung up, her hands shaking even more. "Sarah, seriously, what's going on?" I asked, unable to hide my concern any longer. She took a deep breath, looking me straight in the eye through the mirror. I've been working on a story, something big. Corruption, high-level stuff. And now they're after me. Jesus, I muttered. Are you in danger? She nodded. I think so. They've been following me, trying to scare me off. Tonight, they made it clear. They want me gone. Do you need to go to the police? I suggested, my mind racing with the implications. I tried, she said, her voice barely audible. But they're everywhere. I don't know who to trust. Just as she finished speaking, I noticed headlights in the rearview mirror, getting closer. A black SUV, its tinted windows giving off a menacing vibe. Oh boy, I think we've got company, I said, my heart pounding. Sarah glanced back, her face filled with terror. That's them. You need to lose them. Damn, I muttered, adrenaline surging through me. Hold on tight. I swerved into a side street, the tires screeching on the wet pavement. The SUV followed, its headlights glaring in the mirror. This was straight out of a movie, but there was no time to think. I zigzagged through the narrow streets, trying to shake them off. Left, take a left, Sarah shouted, gripping the seat. I did as she said, narrowly avoiding a parked car. The SUV was still on our tail, relentless. Damn it, they're not giving up, I said, my hands slick with sweat. Keep going, Sarah urged, her voice a mix of fear and determination. We sped through the city, the buildings a blur. I took every turn I could, hoping to lose them in the labyrinth of London's streets. But the SUV was always there, a constant, terrifying presence. Just when I thought we'd never shake them, Sarah pointed to a narrow alley. There, turn there. I swerved into the alley, the car barely fitting between the walls. The SUV tried to follow but got stuck, its tires spinning helplessly. Oh boy, that was close. I breathed, my heart racing. We emerged onto a quieter street, the danger seemingly behind us. But the relief was short-lived. Sarah's phone rang again. She answered, her face going pale. No, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Just leave me alone. Who is it? I asked, fear gripping me. They've got my sister, she whispered, her voice breaking. If I don't stop, they'll kill her. Damn, I muttered, feeling the weight of the situation. What do we do? Sarah took a deep breath, wiping her tears. We have to confront them. There's no other way. We drove to a secluded warehouse, the address Sarah received from the call. My stomach churned with dread, but there was no turning back. Sarah was determined, and I couldn't let her face this alone. We parked outside, the warehouse looming ominously. Stay here, Sarah said, her voice steely. I have to go in alone. Like hell you are, I replied, my fear giving way to anger. We're in this together. She nodded, appreciating the support. We crept towards the entrance, the shadows playing tricks on our eyes. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, crates and machinery casting eerie silhouettes. Sarah, a voice called out, echoing through the space. A man stepped forward, his face hidden in the shadows. You shouldn't have come. Let my sister go, Sarah demanded, her voice steady despite the fear. The man laughed, a cold, chilling sound. You think it's that simple? You've caused too much trouble, Sarah. I stepped forward, trying to muster some courage. Leave her alone. This ends now. The man's eyes fixed on me, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Brave, aren't you? Too bad you got involved in something way over your head. Before we could react, the man drew a gun, aiming it at us. My heart pounded, the fear paralyzing. But then, a noise from behind. The police, bursting in, weapons drawn. "Drop the gun!" an officer shouted, their voices echoing in the warehouse. The man hesitated, then lowered the weapon. The police swarmed in, arresting him and his accomplices. Sarah's sister was found, scared but unharmed. The nightmare was finally over. As we were escorted out, Sarah turned to me, gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." "Damn, that was intense," I said, a shaky laugh escaping. "But I'm glad you're safe." Sarah smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. "We both are." And just like that, the ride of terror came to an end. But oh boy, it was a night I'd never forget. Thank you for watching our stories about this uber horror situations. Did you enjoy it? How do you feel about them? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more stories based on real-life events, click on the video appearing on your screen now, or you can check the other horror stories playlist right there. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales. See you in the next video.